And we're back with Harrowings podcast. I've got Bill Lemke of Aging Gratefully, a book of pictures of deadheads from the 1980s and into today. So its subtitle is Deadheads Then and Now. And Bill, you were going to tell me a little bit about how this all got started for you back 46 years ago.
Seems like a little while, doesn't it? Um, my first Grateful Dead show was Alpine Valley here in Wisconsin in 1980. And I was already a photographer at that point, and I also had a great love of music. And the Dead, of course, fell right into that. And so some friends and I got together and decided we were going to go out to Alpine and see a show. And got there early enough we could wander the parking lot, which to me was pretty fascinating as well. And once I got in the venue and started just talking to people and feeling that warm welcome that everybody gave, the show was fantastic. But as a photographer, I felt a need to document this culture because the people were just so incredibly kind. And we're all there for the same reason. We're all there for the music and community. So that's pretty much where it started.
Yeah. And when did you get the idea to actually start photographing people in a formal manner?
I thought about it for quite a while. A couple of years it took me, but I actually saw Richard Avedon's show in Madison, Wisconsin, where he documented people in the West. And that got me inspired. And I thought, well, I need to have something that'll hold all this together. So I had a friend paint an 8 by 10 foot canvas to look like a tie dye shirt. And
Huh.
thought, I'm going to just do formal portraits. And I had been using a 4 by 5 camera for most of my work. And I thought, I love the detail, I love the tonal quality, and I love working with that camera. So that's kind of how it started. And in 1987, 88, in that area, I started going to Alpine and I'd spend the weekend there, set up my portable studio, and just randomly photograph people that were wandering through the parking lot.
That's great. And it's a large format camera you had set up
Yeah,
there.
it's the big camera with bellows and a dark cloth over your head. And
Right.
it looks a little out of place even back in the 80s. But my purpose back then was basically just documentation of the wonderful people. Never a thought about doing a book. That wasn't even on my radar then. It was just create a series of photographs. Maybe I'll get an exhibition of the work at some point, but that's how it started.
Did you ever do an exhibition before the book project started?
I actually did. There's an art museum in Racine, Wisconsin that I had an exhibition at. And we burned incense during it. We had Grateful Dead music playing, and it was just really fun. And that was at the Wisdom Art Museum in Racine.
What year was that? Out of
I
curiosity.
think that could have been around 1990, 1989. I still have some brochures left somewhere from that exhibition.
Oh, wow. Maybe you can bring them out tonight. By the way, you want to talk a little bit about the event tonight?
Okay, so David Gans is getting into town today, and he's going to be doing a concert in Aurora, Illinois, not far outside of Chicago. And we will be there for that. We'll have our merch table with books and a few photographs of band members. And so that's kind of the kickoff of 4 days in a row of concerts with promoting the book.
Yep, I just want to show that again. The Aging Gratefully, Deadheads Then and Now, Bill Lemke and David Gantz are co-authors of that. Now, David wrote a lot of the stories, I understand, in this. And there's also some acknowledgments, dedications, forward by Dennis McNally, and introduction by Rebecca Adams, PhD, as well. And I started looking at Rebecca because I was unfamiliar with her. Do you want to tell me a little bit about her involvement in this?
Well, I've never actually met her face to face, but it turns out that in the 80s, we were at the same concert. She would bring a busload of students to Alpine Valley and some other venues doing basically cultural studies. And somehow, I'm not sure how we missed connecting back then, but David recommended we talk to her and get her input because that's right up her alley as well. And Dennis McNally actually helped make it possible for me to do the photographs. For a period, probably late 80s, maybe early 90s, they were trying to keep people from vending in the parking lot. And Dennis said, you can go ahead. There'll be people coming out, stopping other people from selling shirts or whatever. And he told him, just, leave me alone. I'm doing my thing and I've got his blessing. So
So you got
we,
some top cover. Yeah.
yeah, so, with his blessing, we were able to continue the project and make more photographs.
For those who don't know, Dennis McNally is kind of like the historian. What would you call him for the Grateful Dead? Their official biographer?
Yeah, I think so. And he was basically their publicity manager at the time. So that's how I connected with him.
Right.
And he's been really helpful. And the fact that he was willing to put something in the book too was great. Never hurts to have names like that associated with a project.
Right. Among Deadheads, of course, they're very well known, but I know that some of our guests may be unfamiliar with the whole culture and such.
Yeah.
And, going back to what that immediate 1980 experience was like in Alpine Valley, right? That show?
Yeah.
Um, tell me more.
So Alpine Valley is basically a ski hill, and it's really close to where I live. But they built this beautiful music venue as well, and they used to get musicians. Summer would be full of concerts, and it's got a big lawn seating area. It also has a lot of reserved seating under a big cover. And from what I understand, the Dead really liked playing there. And it's out in the countryside, kind of like Deer Creek in Indiana used to be. From what I understand, though, that's changed over the years. But Alpine's still kind of the same, and they still got some concerts going on there. Not as many, but they're still great shows.
You remember any specific interactions you had at that first show out in the
Uh,
parking lot?
just I think it was kind of amazing getting hugs from people you don't know.
Right.
That was just the way people were, and
Right.
wandering through and seeing that. Oh, hey, I'm thirsty. I want a beer, and here's somebody with a cooler full of beer for $1. Nobody's out trying to take advantage of anybody else. It's like I just want to make it a little bit so I can move on to the next show.
Yep. I remember hearing a story of somebody encountering Phil Lesh one time on the street, and Phil was carrying a paper bag full of beer. And so the guy came up and said, "Hey, Phil, what you got in the bag?" And he said, or he came up first, I think, and said something like, "You look really familiar." And Phil said, "You do too." And then, yeah, I said, "What do you have in the bag?" And Phil very slowly pulled out a beer and tossed it to him. Went
Oh,
on.
nice.
And I heard that Jerry sometimes would go out into the parking lot and, actually would give, like, a deadhead $100, to get a good meal,
Wow.
someplace to sleep. And I don't know where I read that story, I'll have to dig it out, but, one of the great things is we have the internet now, and we can do those kind of things. We can
Yeah.
make connections to people virtually, like you were talking about making a connection to your, um, hmm,
Well, and I
introduction.
think too, without the internet, I don't know if it would have been as possible to create this book because my wife was able to post images for people to identify
Right.
someone and say, "Hey, I know so and so." So it came together thanks to the internet. No matter how many times I curse it.
Well, a lot of the culture of the internet really came straight out of the Deadhead community as well, which I think is
Yeah.
really fascinating.
Yeah.
I bet David has talked to you a lot, or maybe you experienced the well already. Do you know the well.com?
I don't know.
Oh, it was one of the, early bulletin boards, and it got kind of taken over by people who were Grateful Dead enthusiasts, among whom were John Perry Barlow,
Oh
the
yeah.
lyricist, for Bob,
Yeah.
and John Perry Barlow, they went on to found the Electronic Frontiers Foundation, which seeks to keep the web open and free, and there's so many good TED Talks he's done, and I just
Yeah.
like to amplify those signals through the noise, and one of them, of course, is just, like, how these people came about and what's happened to them since 1988 or 1991 or anywhere in there, right? The photographs generally span that period.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned Jerry going out into the crowd,
Mhm,
and so I met somebody about a week and a half ago. I did a little talk at a camera store, and there
mhm.
was a guy that came in, and he said he used to work backstage doing electrical stuff and things at Alpine Valley. And he said that he was backstage during a performance, and Jerry came out and said, "Hey, you want to have dinner with my wife and I?" And he did. He sat down and had dinner with Jerry and his wife. Like stuff like that, I think is pretty amazing.
The immediacy and the connection between the band and the audience is unique, I think, in the
Yeah,
case of the Grateful Dead. Some other bands may have similar relationships with their fans now. I know that there's so many spinoffs as well. So
yeah,
one of those spinoffs is The Broken Angel,
yeah.
and, playing tonight, Aurora, Illinois, so I'm looking forward to maybe tapping into a stream. Somebody's bound to be putting it out there as
Oh
well.
yeah.
And the taping of, shows was something the Grateful Dead really got into more. So maybe, when you were some of your other experiences at shows before you actually got the camera out in the lot and started doing that, I'd like to hear about how that evolved from 1980, say, to the point where you got your studio in the lot.
So I used to go to a lot of shows with a friend of mine, Tom Fritz, who you will notice has some photographs in the book as well. He's a photographer in Milwaukee, and we were just good friends with similar musical tastes, and
Mhm.
just started going to Alpine Valley, and we'd hang out for 4 days and sleep in the parking lot, and just meet people, and enjoy being out there, and of course have a beer or two, and um, it was a great way to connect with him, which came all the way back around again, and we've um, rekindled our friendship thanks to the books. So, but there were so many people that I would talk to in the parking lot scene, and again, dancing around inside the venue. I often got lawn seats, so you were free to move around, and
Right.
everybody was just so friendly. So it was a great experience, and I went to Chicago to see him, and I'd go down to Deer Creek and see him, and in those venues too, I would set up my portable studio and photograph people. And of course, working with a big camera that not a lot of people were familiar with attracted people as well. It's like, hey, what's going on here?
Yeah, it's really kind of a throwback to see that equipment there. How did you get involved with a big format camera?
When I was a senior in high school, I thought I was going to be an auto mechanic, and in my senior year, I
Mhm.
took a graphics class, and part of it was photography. And immediately, I thought, this is what I want to do. I want to make photographs. I want to have clients pay for me to travel, and so I pursued that through Milwaukee Area Technical College. I did a workshop with Ansel Adams out in California. Then I assisted at a workshop, and of course, Ansel worked. Everything he did was with a large format camera, and
Mhm.
I immediately got attracted to that just because the quality of the images. Just working with that big negative.
Right, the grain, is very fine when you're doing
Yeah.
that, and
Yeah.
I remember doing a lot of darkroom work myself when I was in high school. I was photography editor of my school newspaper for my junior year.
Yeah.
That was about the same year you went to your first show, actually, 1980.
Yeah. Well, to this day, I still work with that camera, and I also have an 8x10 view camera, which is even bigger. So it's a love. I love the technique. I love what's involved with making the photographs, and I really love printing them as well.
Yeah, so you're doing a lot of wet work photography. That's an art and a discipline and a kind of the rhythm of doing things and taking them from one pan to the other. I miss that actually. I haven't done it in years, but my father had a study over our garage, and we used to just be able to put out blackout things on the windows, turn
Yeah.
it into a dark room, and it was fairly spacious. It was, um, it was
Yeah.
really, and he was
What's
doing.
kind of
I'm
what's
sorry.
kind of interesting as well is so I bought a house from my mom when I was like 19 years old. So
Wow.
I never moved out. I moved her out. And so I lived in that house for over 40 years. And then when I finally decided to move out in the country a little farther, I helped design the house, and I basically designed it around a dark room because I wanted 9 foot ceilings. I wanted a heated floor because I print mostly in the winter, so I can be barefoot in my dark room. And so this is about the time everything's starting to go digital, and people are like, "What? You're building a dark room?" It's
Why? Yeah, you can just do it like that.
like, what I'm really glad I did. Yeah, I'm not a computer person. I'm much more of a hands-on physical thing. So
Well, there's a lot to be said for that hands-on physical discipline, I think, the rhythm of working as
yeah,
well. There's really nothing quite like it, I think, in terms of watching that image come out of the paper, as
yeah.
a developing solution.
And I did manage to make a living as a photographer. I did a lot of advertising work, but I had clients, one in particular that sent me to Korea and Singapore and Thailand and down to South America, photographing architectural stuff for them. So I would
Interesting.
always allow enough time that I could do landscape photographs for myself on those trips.
Mhm. Do you have a collection of those as well to publish, or have you published them?
Well, they would be printed in brochures, and of course, then eventually all these images would end up online to promote for these different companies that I was photographing for. But I did
Okay.
everything from food to architecture. Not a lot with people, which is kind of interesting because, of course, the portraits are a step away from that.
Yeah, that's interesting. So the deadhead pictures you were doing, people have you not done things outside of that? Is that what I'm hearing?
The only other experience with photographing people was I made a few trips to Egypt and I did street photography there. And
Okay.
again, I used to work with the landscape, which isn't talking back to me. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, I've got to deal with people that may or may not want to be photographed. And of
Right.
course, in the case of the deadheads, they were fine being photographed.
Yeah, I can imagine, they might have been.
So one
What was
interesting thing
the
was
searching too?
back
Go
in
ahead.
back in 2015 when they played Soldier Field, way after Jerry's passing, which
Right,
was supposed to be their last show.
right.
Uh, woman Chris put a simulcast together in a big warehouse, and she contacted me and said, "Hey, could you bring some of your photographs down and hang them?"
Oh, cool.
And I did, and it was kind of interesting because after the show at Soldier Field, people would filter in there. And I was standing by my photographs, and people would come up and say, "I remember you from the parking lot." And there was no way I was letting you take my picture. They thought I was like a DEA agent. I thought, that's a pretty elaborate setup to try and trap somebody with a view camera. So, but they were kind of sad that they hadn't been photographed after they saw the pictures of people that I did back in the 80s, and they wished they had been part of that.
Mm. Yeah, I can imagine. I wouldn't have minded having my photograph done as I was filtering through Charlotte, getting into the line, we arrived just before the Dead hit the stage after hitchhiking from Ashland, Virginia, down to Charlotte, North Carolina, which is about 400 miles.
Wow.
We hitchhiked back for Richmond the next night. So that was my entire Grateful Dead experience. I saw exactly what you saw, which was the audience was the show.
Right.
I was not paying a lot of attention to the band at all. I was like, "Okay, they're doing Starfire to open up the second set. That's lovely, but I'm gonna go outside and see what all these twirling people are doing."
Exactly. Yeah.
Sitting in circles, giving each other massage. It was just weird, and
Yeah.
and I thought, "Wow, this is kinda like I'd like to be a part of this." But then I thought, "Well, now I'm going back to school." And then I got married and settled down. So when the Warlock show came through, Hampton Coliseum, we're talking about how they were suppressing the vending a
Yeah.
bit. Yeah, and they did a show as the Warlocks, or the band formerly known as the Warlocks at Hampton Coliseum. I was not in part of it then, but, I do have the whole set back here on CD somewhere.
Yeah.
That's actually getting to be, like, old too because everything's streamed these days,
I
and the
know.
quality of the music, of course, there's the resurgence of vinyl, but yeah, um, something about the technologies that we had in the past being preserved is really appealing, to me, in
Yeah.
your photography.
And basically, that's what I'm doing with film photography is,
Yeah,
bringing back the past. And there seems to be a resurgence in using film.
yep. You mentioned that you just got this T-shirt, the Leica T-shirt. You wanna tell the story of that a little bit?
So, my daughter has been a great supporter of me and my work. And this was an early Father's Day gift I just opened yesterday. And so I thought I'd put it on for this today. It's a special shirt coming from her. And she's quite an artist herself, but she does mostly drawing, pen and ink drawing, and pencil drawings. And she lives in Manhattan, so I don't see her often other than we talk almost every day.
Well, that's great. You have that good a relationship with your kids. I
Yeah.
never Sounds like you had a good relationship with your parents as well, if you got your mother the house and
Yeah, with my mom, I did. My dad and I had kind of a stressed relationship as I was a teenager, but and I think I was 17 when he passed away. So what's interesting is my mom remarried, and I realized after a while I knew my stepdad longer than I even knew my dad.
wow.
Fortunately, my dad and I went out to dinner a couple times together before he passed, and I remember those very vividly because it was so unusual at that point for my dad and I just to go out to have a dinner together.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you have those memories. I have one like that of my dad. Last time I saw him to the point where he could communicate was, to take him out to dinner, and he drove his own car. He's 91 years old, and it was a pre-birthday thing from my mother. I was not able to get down there every time I wanted to at the time, so I would, do the pre-birthdays, and, I have that photograph of him sitting there tucking into a steak, and, he just loved getting into a good steak at, Street Bistro, and knowing that we had that, we don't have any unfinished business was a really good thing, I think. This, whole project, Harrowings, is a publishing arm of the Harold B. Gill Foundation that I set up after I lost my last, contracting gig. So that's what this is about. We scratched the surface in Harrowings. We sort of till up the soil to see what will sprout. So that's
Yeah.
how our conversation is going to. I'm not looking at my questions, but if there was one that stood out to you that you wanna get into, I'd be happy to hear what.
Offhand, I can't. I can't. Well, I could mention a little bit about how David got involved in this
Yeah,
project.
let's
Because
talk.
let me take one step back too. I believe it was 2015. There's a guy named Jeffrey that's in the book, and I photographed him with his daughter, and she was
Uh-huh.
very young at the time. And in 2015, he contacted me and he said his daughter had grown up, had moved to Chicago, and could I send him another print so she could have one? Because everybody I photographed, I sent a print to.
Right.
So I did. I sent it off, and he said, "Oh, by the way, you're not far from Chicago. Would you consider driving down and rephotographing us?" I said, "It sounds like an interesting idea." But then he mentioned his son-in-law was a chef, and he would prepare lunch. And I said, "Yeah, I'll be there." So my wife Carmen and I went down there, spent the afternoon with him and his wife and his daughter and son-in-law. And it was just this really beautiful afternoon. And I rephotographed them, and that was the start. But again, at that point, it's like, how do I find these people? I have physical addresses from back in the 80s, which none of them live at anymore.
Mhm.
And if it wasn't for my wife posting things online, we would never have come up with the 42 that we rephotographed. So, and it was all her doing. So then at that point, it's like, well, I've got photographs from before and after, but I still don't, it needs stories to go with that. And so I tried a couple local writers that were not deadheads and
Mhm.
didn't quite get the idea or the urgency of doing this. And so finally, I just said, Carmen, would you send a message to David Gans? And we may never hear back from him, but at least we'll make the effort to see if he's interested in the project. And within minutes, I think he wrote back to us and he said, "This is right up my alley. I want to be part of this." So that's where that all came about. And it's funny because I felt like I was begging him to be part of it, and when he talks about it, he says, "I practically begged to be part of this project." So it's kind of fun. It's like we both have a similar interest in getting this done. And he's been hugely important in doing this book.
Yeah, I think we were talking about it in the course of one of his Stanford courses on Grateful Dead that he does as part of their continuing education program, and he mentioned that doing this and how much he was, leaping at the chance to write the stories, with the interviews with the 42, you said,
I
of
think there's 42 before and after pictures with interviews. And then all the original people that I photographed are in the book as well.
so this 2015 Contact, that really sort of springboarded everything. Was that
Yeah.
before the Fare Thee Well shows, or was it related to that?
No, that was, I'm trying to think. That was after that.
Okay.
Um, Yeah, I know the Dead or Further or whatever they called it back in 2002 played Alpine Valley because
I
again,
see.
that's one of their favorite venues. And just before the show, I got contacted by Dennis McNally, and he said, "We're going to have a little exhibition at Alpine, and would you consider coming down and bringing some of your photographs? And of course, I jumped at the chance, and it was really fun because I got to go in, the night before when there was a rehearsal going on, and there was, I think, 8 of us that watched the rehearsal, watched Bobby lead the band through everything, and but I set up my work, and right across from me was a display of all of the decorated envelopes that people would send in, and they had them
Uh-huh.
framed. There was a stage set from like 1968 with Jerry's amplifier and the drums and everything, and it was a cool event. And I got to go hang out backstage. In fact, after I set up the next day when I went back, I went on my motorcycle and just drove backstage and parked there. And I talked to Bill Kreutzmann at that thing, but again, I was nervous about that. So,
Sure.
but it was really a fun event, and I was glad to be included in it. Oh,
Yes, that's 2002. Uh-huh. Go ahead.
one other interesting thing that happened is while I was setting the work up, this woman came up and started talking to me about it and mentioned how much she really liked the portraits. And
Mhm.
when she walked away, someone said, "You know who you were talking to, right?" And I said, "I don't have a clue." And he said, "That was Jill Lesh."
Oh, wow. Oh,
I had
cool.
no idea. So,
Well, I'm glad she liked your work. I mean,
yeah,
I understand she could be quite critical of people's, input. When I
yeah,
was reading the Fare Thee Well book, actually, I have that right here too, that whole thing about the
yeah.
run-up to 2015 and the frictions involved, which are kind of fascinating, the backstories of how these
Oh,
people,
yeah,
others are, sort of grinding against each other, but,
yeah,
it's lived life, and it has the shadow and the light, as I think Jay Blakesberg would say.
yeah.
That, his, exhibit, I think, is called something like that, Shadows and Light or Darkness, Black and anyway, he did a lot of black and white photography, so
Yeah. Well, once we got David Gans on board, it's like, oh no, now I have to do a book.
and that was right in 2015 that he got on board? Or
No, it was actually about a year and a half ago in
okay,
November. We had accumulated most of the photographs, but I still had a few to do. So we got him involved at that point, and he started contacting people and doing the Zoom calls and started compiling their stories. And the first time I met him was last November when the book was finished. And
interesting.
he came to Milwaukee area. He stayed with us for about a week and did a few shows. He did a house concert out in my studio, which was really fun. Did a venue in Milwaukee. Did Garcia's down in Chicago, which
Oh,
was,
good.
and we'll be there again Sunday night. So
Sunday night at Garcia's, okay.
Sunday night at Garcia's. That should be a really fun event.
Well, we wanna plug that for sure, and, Aurora, Illinois tonight. Now what are the other stops?
So he's playing at a place called Argo in Milwaukee on Friday night. And
Okay,
then there's a microbrewery, and I'm trying to think, Sisters Lake over in Michigan. And it's their 10th anniversary, but they've got Mr. Blotto playing as well. So it'll be David and the Broken Angels opening up. And so we'll be there for that event as well.
and then Garcia's on Sunday.
And Garcia's on Sunday night to finish it up. And again, I can't thank David enough because he's really helped promote this book. It would never have gotten the footing that it's got without him being involved.
Yeah, and that's one of the generosity things, the kindness is that people just sort of giving of themselves, and the results tend to speak for themselves. I think it's been supporting David for a long time, and, he's such a good archivist of the scene.
Oh yeah. I
And
want
with
to
this
talk a little bit just briefly about my friend Tom that I would go to shows with.
yeah.
So when I was doing the portraits, he had his panorama camera and he was doing infrared photographs in the parking lot.
Hmm,
So I had actually approached him a few years ago when I started rephotographing people, saying, "Hey Tom, would you be interested in putting some of your work in the book?" And yeah, he was busy doing commercial work, and he didn't remember where his negatives were filed, and so he just kept saying, "Yeah, maybe I'll get to it one day." And then
mhm,
the unfortunate part is his wife passed away about a year and a half ago,
sorry.
and he was just horribly depressed. So again, I contacted him. I wanted to talk to him, and see what I could do. And I said, Tom, it'd be really fun if we could work together on this book and you could find some of your images. And
Mhm.
I I can't tell you the messages that he sent me thanking me for getting him involved and how it helped pull him out of his depression. His wife's memorial service was actually just this last Saturday. It took him a long time to get to the place where he could actually do that. And his kids were there and they thanked me for getting him involved. But he's got some beautiful photographs, including the back cover of the book. And he got really involved. He was at all 4 events last fall. Yep, that's one of his photographs. And there's a few of them spread out throughout the book. And um, so he's gotten really involved. He's going to be at Garcia's on Sunday night. He's going to be at the event here in Milwaukee at Argo on Friday night. And yeah,
Pull that up there. That's one of his, right?
yep,
Oh,
yeah. And there's a double page spread at the beginning of the book of Alpine Valley, which is also his photograph, which is kind of a cool. It sets the mood for the whole book.
that's kind of
Yeah.
hard to keep in the frame. But then, and I've got a little glare there, but you got to get the book, folks.
You got to get the book. You got to read the stories, and yeah, it's been a quite an adventure. I've never published a book before, and we self-published this. I paid for all of the printing and everything up front, and we're quickly approaching the break-even point, which, as far as I'm concerned, the comments I've gotten back from people that have gotten the book and that are in the book made it all worthwhile. So,
It is definitely something I enjoyed kickstarting with you because when I can move the needle a little bit for somebody else's creative work, I feel like I've become a part of it. And I highly, it just gives a little charge when you're able to do a little something for somebody else who's trying to move something out there that's serving the public.
yeah,
What you just said about serving Tom, though, too, with his loss, yeah, I can't really begin to express my gratitude for people who do that, who recognize that we're all going through this life and experiencing losses. And it's like
yeah,
I used to lead off my interviews on KSAQ radio with my friend Holly, Lori, and Adams, for which David was partially responsible obliquely. I'll tell that story real briefly. Um, and I'd lead it off with Sylvia by Bob Dylan. Do you know the song?
oh yeah,
I could tell you fancy, I could tell you plain. You give something up for everything you gain.
yeah, yeah,
There is a continual series of losses to experience in life, but it's all good at the end of the day. That's actually, I
yeah,
think It's All Good was co-written with Robert Hunter, song off of Together Through Life, one of Dylan's albums from the 2000 teens, I think, the early teens. But, the thing with David and generosity, like I say, stumbled into his green room crew as he got into these virtual performances to fill in where the touring would dried up during the pandemic. And he said he was going to be interviewed on KSKQ radio, which is in the Rogue Valley of Southern Oregon, by Holly, Lori, and Adams, who does the morning show, and she'll interview people. And she had called up. She said this is like the only time it ever happened, practically, that on the Golden Road to Unlimited Devotion radio show that he
yeah.
does on Sirius XM radio, she called in twice and got on twice. The second time to invite him to be her guest. And when she was being interviewing him, she just stopped and talked about a deadhead experience where she had been at a show and somebody left a little slip of paper underneath their windshield wiper saying, "Hey, I like the stickers on your car, and I'd like to trade some tapes." And that was it. And
Yeah,
so we called the number, and that led to all kinds of things. And it was just an example of deadhead connection and kindness and such. And then she mentioned the guy's name, and it turned out he was my wedding singer's husband at the time of my wedding.
oh wow,
I had met him then. I would never have met him otherwise, except that my wife knew his wife through a thing called Thai Sophia that they had been involved in. I think Jill was teaching a class, and she did a few Cole Porter numbers for us. We weren't doing Deadhead stuff then. In fact, I went to the Locken Festival in 2014. That's when I got back on the bus after 30 years.
yeah.
And when I came back, my wife said, "What happened to you? I married you. You were not a Deadhead." Well, a little bit. I'm wearing my Rex Foundation hat. In fact,
Yeah,
You're familiar with Red?
Yeah.
Okay. So, we're all trying to do the best we can with what we have to move the needle for others. And I've been on Holly's show now. I was on her guest the next week is how it turned out. And I'm nobody in particular, but we just struck up a conversation, a friendship. I've been on her show a few times, broadcasting out in KSKQ in Southern Oregon. And I make sure that she gets requests from me. So, tunes I find important get played out there. I don't know. I'm just always trying to amplify people's signals through the noise of cyberspace
Yeah.
because honestly, it's really cacophonous out here.
Well, I had a funny experience that just came into my mind. Is I was
Mhm.
at Sphere in March a year ago,
Okay.
and I had a ticket through StubHub, and I get a message on Friday saying, "Oh, by the way, that person's not going to release that ticket to you." So here I am stuck on Friday without a ticket for the show. But I was there handing out cards related to the book, and
Uh-huh.
I like this. And within a minute, a woman walked up to me and she said, "You want a ticket for tonight's show?" And I said, "I'd love one. What can I give you for it?" She said, "No, it's yours." And so I have a picture in the book of me in front of the Sphere holding up the ticket. And I sent a picture off to my daughter saying, "I got a miracle. 70 years old and I got my first miracle." And she laughs about it.
That was
But
your first miracle?
it's my first miracle. But then my wife reminded me, she said, "You usually bought tickets for shows, so you weren't really looking for a ticket at that point." But it shows you can get a miracle at any age.
You can. Actually, I have a couple of stories on that myself. Ardmore Music Hall has a thing called Unlimited Devotion every, year now since 2016. It's the East Coast edition of Wavy Gravy's birthday, and it
Oh, yeah.
benefits the Foundation and Camp on a Rainbow. So, I've been going on a whim, I went the first year, and they did a little screening of his film, Saint Misbehavin',
Okay.
at the Bryn Mawr Cinema. And, so what I've done, for a couple of years now is bought a booth and miracled the rest of the seats in the booth to anybody who wanted to step up for them. So that's and, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Move the needle a little bit for somebody else. Um, and it pays back a little bit of what I've gotten from it all. When I
Yeah.
was at the first one, I won the raffle at the Mainline Arts Center where Scott Shapiro was, exhibiting his Grateful Dead poster collection. That's really how it all started.
Yeah.
Wavy's daughter-in-law was on the board, and when he pitched exhibiting his posters there, she said, "Does he know?" And, they he didn't know who she was. He had no idea that there was a connection, and they made it a combination thing where Wavy could come out and visit grandchildren, and, then they could have this thing, and I won a Breitling watch in the raffle.
Oh.
So I'm paying that back ever since. Um, the other thing, was at the great, Dead& and Company's last tour, they traveled around. I was at Philadelphia for that. I come up from DC. It was the closest they were coming that year, and, a friend of mine who taught me some guitar, though she's in the band called Happy Fits now, so at a touring thing, sort of cut my virtual guitar lessons with Raina Mullen, and she got a miracle out there, but from Jay Blakesberg himself.
Oh,
So
wow.
that was kind of a funny
That's
story.
pretty special.
Yeah, I've never run into her face to face, but she played with a band called Ghostlight, which has got Tom Hamilton on guitar as well as her, and Holly Bowling on the keyboards. You know Holly, by
I
any
don't
chance?
know.
Check her out sometime. Holly Bowling. This is her Wilderness Sessions camp mug. During the
Oh,
pandemic, she was traveling around with a Sprinter van, her husband, and her dog, and she set up in like the Utah salt flats and played Dark Star on her keyboard. She's
oh, wow.
primarily a keyboardist who did blues stuff, and I think she got most famous for Tahoe Tweezer. And then after that, there was Grateful Dead covers that she did. I ran into her on like the 1st of August of 2017 when she was opening for Live Dead 69. I had no idea there was an opening act. But here comes this young lady, sits down at a grand piano and very demurely sort of acknowledges the audience and then starts playing China Cat through her 10 fingers, doing all the instruments. She's classically trained. So she's worth listening to. Yeah.
Yeah.
I kickstarted her album called Seeking All That's Still Unsung,
Yeah.
which a very similar kind of cover to this white black on white kind of stuff. But it got me through the pandemic, listening to David's live streams, listening to Holly do her wilderness sessions, which are all available on YouTube now. And,
Yeah,
we can transmit those, see the noise, and get through anything that the world throws at us. And
yeah,
here in Washington, D.C., of course, I'm watching a lot of the passing show go by and seeing this kind of thing. I take the passing show, by the way, I'm gonna plug Ronnie Lane for a second. Do you know who Ronnie Lane is?
I know the name. Yeah.
He was with the Faces.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He went on a caravan tour, like a circus act, called Passing Show, and I just love that idea that we're all watching this passing show. We're all participating in it. We all have our role to play. And
Yeah,
the role you've been playing has been, documenting this scene in ways that deserve to be amplified.
yeah.
So
Well, I
that's
appreciate that. And going back to the whole Kickstart thing, we had a lot of people that helped support that and get it off the ground, which was I'm very thankful for. It was funny because, once the book was completed, then we had to ship 250 books out. And we go to my little local post office here. I'm in a small area. And we brought a truckload over, and they said, that's all we can handle for today. So I said, well, then I'll have another load for tomorrow.
all right. Well, I hope it moves like hotcakes when you get out there. And I do know that you probably need to prepare somewhat for this as well. So I want to be respectful of your time.
Yeah. Well, we don't have to leave till this afternoon sometime, but I also have an interview this afternoon with Relics. So,
Excellent.
yeah.
I'm looking forward to hearing that one. That'll be streamed on Relic, will it?
That I don't know if they're going to do something written because, I get these Relics magazine things, but they actually published some of the photographs back in the late 80s in Relics magazine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they
I think
were familiar with the images, but not the book project. So,
I don't know if it was Relics that got Jay Blakesberg his start or not. Are you familiar with his first published photograph?
no, I don't think I am.
There's a funny little story that goes with that. Somewhere around here, I have the book, but I'm not going to bother dragging it out. Um, he was with a lot of his friends in New York City, and they had caught a Yorma show, and he went and tailed Yorma to a deli to get his autograph after Yorma sort of came out, interacted a little bit, and then just hopped in a car and drove off. So
Yeah.
they all piled in their little VW Bug and followed him. But he got a photograph of him, and I guess this is the late '70s, and he had just said, "Hey, Yorma, how about a smile?" And Yorma turned and grinned a big grin at him with the hair that he had at the time and that gold tooth. And I
Oh,
think he
geez.
got that published in Relics, and that was like his first published photograph. And that led one thing leads to another, right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm kind of envious of you guys because I was, like I said, a photography editor of my school newspaper, but I let it go. I didn't continue doing it, although I continued photography to some extent here and there. I never went pro, and it would have been an interesting creative path. But I just thought, I don't know, you know, one thing leads to
Yeah.
another. I've had kind of a bumper car career. It's turned out well. I mean, after all, that's what your stories are about too. Do you have any particular story you'd like to tell of any of these folks that you were
I don't want
photographing?
to give too much detail because you really need the book and you need to
Right.
read the story. But there is a guy named Jody that, for a couple different reasons, couldn't come to us, and we ended up going to him, and he was in Bangkok, Thailand. So that created its own set of problems of recreating that background on a material that I could pack up to take to Thailand, but just hanging out with him for a couple days in Bangkok, and he gave us a tour of the city. And it's he's quite a character, and he posts stuff. He does these walking tours of different cities in Asia, and he's just a really interesting guy. Um,
That that's wonderful. I thank you for giving a little amplification to him. I'm gonna go out and look for him.
well, and then also the David, who is on the cover of the book.
Mhm.
People ask how I chose that image, but what's funny is when I realized it was a book, I immediately knew he was going to be on the cover. He's
Huh.
just something about his look, and it just kind of
Yeah.
exemplifies the whole idea of deadheads. And
Show people that again.
And he's up in Minneapolis, and I'm not sure if he's coming down this weekend or not. I haven't heard from him, but he may show up at one of the events.
That's fantastic. I
And
love
also,
it.
we got Milwaukee PBS came out and did a 9-minute video, which the beginning of the video is some footage from the parking lot at Alpine Valley. But if you go to my website, you can watch that video. It's really a great job, and they have an interview with me and with David. So that was a fun thing, and it's amazing how many people got involved with helping to promote this whole thing.
Well, great. I'll probably write an article about this, plug our little interview here into it, and maybe get those clips as well
Yeah.
when I get a chance to pull it all together. Actually, David Hilgendorf has joined the call and says, "I'm sorry I can't make it this weekend. Have a blast."
Oh, we'll miss him. That's too bad. He's just such a fun guy. He actually stayed with us when he was here in November and just had a really fun time hanging out together.
I'm so glad to hear it.
But
And
yeah,
that's
there was no process of going through figuring out what was on the cover. It was immediate.
wonderful. I
Yeah.
think this is a good example for everybody. We can all emulate this kind of kindness, this kind of interaction with each other, be kind to each other generally. And I think we can transform society that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
One one conversation at a time, as I like to say.
Yeah. Well, the book actually became a permanent part of me when I finished it.
Mhm.
I had told my daughter a long time ago because she got a couple little tattoos which bothered me, and I said, "Why would you do that? You have such beautiful skin. I created this wonderful child," and she just laughed it off. And I said, "I would never do that to myself." So when the book was completed, I have a friend who owns a place in Waukesha, and I
Ah, there you go.
decorated myself in kind of the celebration of finishing the book. And she called me immediately when she saw it. She said, "Dad, what are you doing?"
He has such beautiful skin.
Not anymore. Not at this
But
age.
that's beautiful. And the 13 pointed star, in that red and blue, field, we
Yeah.
could all come together on dance floor, red and blue, right?
Yeah.
That's one thing I picked up from Denise Perrant. Do you know Denise by any chance?
No, no.
She's a drummer for Brown Eyed Women and the Deadbeats.
Oh,
And
okay.
and she's based somewhere near Woodstock, New York, I think. But she tours with the Brown Eyed Women. David knows her pretty well, I think. Actually, I got to know her because we were doing this thing through something called StreamStock. Rosemary Anati had this thing go on where you sort of had a box, virtually speaking, for a show which interacted uh, both with the people who were in the presentation. It was an interview show really with Scott Guberman, who's a keyboardist, if you know
Okay.
this, and David Gantz, and it was called "Shooting the Shit with Guberman and Gantz." And Denise was a guest there,
Yeah.
and they would like be able to move into your box basically and have individual conversations with the people who were in that particular group of viewers. It
Yeah.
was an interesting little experiment. I don't know if it's still going on. I saw a post from Rosemary just today, though, so I know she's out there somewhere. And yeah, there's so many opportunities and so many ways in which the technologies, both old technology using large format cameras
Yeah.
to the digital technologies we have now to doing this on Substack. I understand you're new to Substack as well, but I
Brand
think it's
new. I was not familiar with it at all.
yeah, it's kinda nice because it'll push this out automatically as soon as I hit the publish button to YouTube,
Yeah.
and it'll make its own little clips without me doing anything.
That's pretty nice.
Yeah, and well, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good, but you can sort of pick and choose which to publish, but we'll publish all of them as shorts on YouTube.
Yeah.
And they also go out on Spotify, Acast, Apple Podcasts, so there are lots of different ways in which the signal will be amplified out onto the internet and hopefully be preserved for long term. Because that's one of the things that's interesting to me is the archival nature of these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
That we are, like you say, documenting the scene for potentially research historians of the future.
Yeah. Well, they say none of it goes away, but I have had emails that I want to save that somehow go away.
Yes. And that same thing, the digital media is a new field, and when I was working in conservation, that was part of my background in the Carnegie Museum of Art. The electronic art was really challenging.
Yeah.
Because you think about Andy Warhol did some computer-generated stuff, right, on, like, these old Amiga computers,
Wow.
and, the Warhol Museum is really challenged to keep that preserved. Anyhow, I probably ought to let you go on to the next things, and, we can wrap up. What would you really want the audience to take away from this whole conversation?
Um, just to realize that this culture is extremely important and that it can lead to really good things, especially in the world we live in today. It's like there's this great community of kind people, and sometimes we forget that, but they're out there, and it's
And thank
not to me.
and thank you so much for being kind enough to spend some time with me, here on Harrowings podcast. I'm gonna let you go, and, we'll push this out, and, we'll see you around. If you ever get to Washington, DC, look me up. Let's keep
I was
connected.
just going to say we need to meet face to face at some point, so I'll make
Well,
that
I don't travel a lot, but I'll do what I can. My wife just had cataract surgery, and, she's disabled from a stroke, so I'm not so mobile now, but, I do try to get up to Philadelphia when I can, and I'm always here in Washington, DC, right down by, DuPont Circle, about 2 blocks north.
Oh, okay. Well, that would be fun. We'll
Yeah,
make that happen.
lovely meeting you. Take care.
Great to meet you as well. Bye.
Bye.